Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining today's stream. It is 3rd of December. Now it's 5 past 11 in the morning, Moscow time. And as always, I have prepared quite a number of important stories for you, important news that Russian media is focused on, Russian public, and hopefully you will find this new segment informative and interesting. And in that case, please don't forget to like the video and to leave some commentary. This might help to deal with the algorithm. And dear friends, several times during the stream, if I may, I will drop in the chat on YouTube link to my Rumble channel. I'm streaming simultaneously on YouTube and Rumble, and if it's not too inconvenient for you, if you are watching on YouTube this live stream, please click. It's just one click, by the way, just one click, and you are on my Rumble channel. I'm dropping link right now. And I will do it like in 15-20 minutes again when more people will join, hopefully live stream. So yes, if you can, please watch my videos on Rumble. This might be helpful. Obviously, there is a huge community on Rumble also, and we need alternatives, isn't it? We all need alternatives for YouTube, which is extremely aggressive, by the way. And I don't know how long my channel gonna be in shadow ban, maybe forever. And it is quite stressful and nerve-breaking when you are working, doing your thing, trying hard, by the way, but you just cannot deal with this freaking algorithm. You just cannot do nothing, right? So maybe Rumble algorithm will be a little less aggressive, hopefully. Anyways, let's go through some news, and obviously, everybody is talking about yesterday's meeting in Moscow between Special Envoy of U.S. President Steve Witkoff, also son-in-law of Trump, Kushner. I still don't know what is his status, really, why he is engaged in this high-level diplomatic talks. Maybe Trump has no one else to trust, really, and he's sending his family members on this kind of negotiations to attend there. I don't know, but it's strange. It's really strange. Things not supposed to be done this way, but nevertheless, that's the chaotic world that we are living, isn't it? So there was a meeting between Witkoff, Kushner, God knows who else was in their delegation, and also Russian President Vladimir Putin. In talks, during the talks, aides of Russian President Kirill Dmitriev, and Ushakov was also present. And after the meeting, Ushakov made a couple of statements in regards to negotiations that took 5 hours, by the way. You know, yesterday, during the first update, I said that maybe I'll do a second live stream later on today if we will have any information about this meeting that was planned. But yet again, meeting started at 8 p.m. And lasted until, I don't know, man, 12 p.m., 12 a.m. already, or 1 a.m. It was a long conversation, so I could not make a live stream, obviously. Although I was updating my Telegram and Twitter X pages, and well, let me give you some details about statements of Ushakov about these negotiations. So Vladimir Putin held a substantive meeting with the U.S. representatives, according to Russian presidential aide Yuri Ushakov. Conversation was very useful, constructive, and very informative, he said. And some key details, although it is hard to actually call this information key details because almost nothing is known still to now this moment about these talks, but nevertheless, that's what RIA Novosti, that's a wording that RIA Novosti is using, key details. The meeting did not discuss specific formulations, but the essence of the US plan for settlement in Ukraine. A document containing 27 points So we have an update, by the way. Initially it was a 28 points, then it was 19, then it was 22, now it's 27. It's a freaking circus, by the way. It's a freaking circus. Uh, Embarrassing stuff is going on, really. On this level, on this high level, by the way, things should be done a little more professionally, I guess. It's a laughing stock at this point. I mean, at least the U.S. leadership should finalize its own stance, right? Is it a 28 point or 19 or 22 or whatever it is, man? Just formalize and then stand on your points, right? I don't know. It's a freaking nonsense, right? But nevertheless, a document containing 27 points was handed over to us, and we reviewing it. Then we received several more documents, four, which were also discussed today. The Russian side may agree with some things, but some proposals have drawn criticism. Ushakov said there also, according to him, a compromise solution has not yet been found, but some American proposals appear more or less acceptable and can be discussed. During the negotiations, the parties touched on territorial issues, without which Moscow sees no solution to the Ukrainian crisis. The president assessed the destructive actions that were taken by the European leadership in the context of a settlement. Moscow and Washington agreed not to disclose the essence of their conversation. Much work remains to be done, so we're not going to learn details, most likely. At least that's what sides agreed. Yesterday, the meeting allowed for discussions of ways for further resolve the conflict, as well as an agreement to continue working together to achieve peace. Putin conveyed greetings to several political signals to Donald Trump. The previous evening, the president received the White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Affinity Partners founder. That's the status of Jared Kushner, by the way, at the Kremlin. Ushakov and RDIF CEO Kirill Dmitriev represented Russia at the meeting. The talks lasted nearly 5 hours. So that's all it is, dear friends. No details, no nothing. And probably, as I predicted, meeting was nothing burger, right? I said quite a number of times before that Moscow will, of course, take diplomatic stand. Let's have a talk. Let's listen to what is your points are, 28, 27, 19, 22, whatever. Let's talk, right? I don't think we should expect Moscow to reject any conversation or any dialogue with the Western so-called elites, right? No matter from which side, Europe or America. But it was expected that no breakthroughs will be achieved there, not even any agreements will be achieved between the sides, and that's exactly what happened. Literally nothing. Sides just exchange opinions and share some points, some prospects, how situation can be resolved. And you tell me now, was it worth 5 hours of Russian president? No, clearly not, isn't it? And that's why I was saying, you know what, these people, Witkoff, Jared Kushner, or whomever that represents US nowadays, at least in regards to this crisis, should be received by assistant of some of the Russian deputies of the Russian Foreign Ministry, or maybe even on a lower level, because it's a freaking nonsense when president of Russian Federation is wasting 5 hours of his time talking to these freaking nobodies, man. It's nonsense. It's just freaking nonsense. It's laughable, right? Okay, diplomacy is diplomacy, and you have to do what you have to do, right? To make sure that you are sending clear message that, well, Moscow is open for dialogue. Okay, but I mean, that message could be sent if assistant of a Russian deputy foreign minister of or someone else, by the way, doorman in foreign ministry will greet these people, man. Message would be sent anyways, right? We are open for faking talks. But obviously, Washington is not there yet to capitulate before Russia, to agree on serious concessions, to withdraw US from this proxy war against that the West is waging against Russia. So therefore, I don't think it is rational when Russian president is greeting these people. A personal opinion, you might have a different take on that. It's okay, of course, but I was correct, isn't it? I was, every time these kind of meetings happened, I said it's a faking nothing burger. Every time I was correct. So that means my reading of the big picture is correct, generally speaking. Anyways, let's continue with some other news in regards to this whole situation. Lenta.ru, one of the Russian media outlets, paid attention to information from NBC News, according to which Russia has refused, allegedly, to make concessions on 3 points of Trump's peace plan. You see how upside down the situation is, at least in the Western world. They are still pushing some crazy narratives that it's Russia that has to agree on the concessions. I mean, what the hell, man? Russia has defeated collective West on the battlefield, right? And how Russia gonna agree on any concessions whatsoever? Winners do not agree on the concessions. Losers do, right? Losers do, man. And collective West is a loser. It's simple as that. Period. There is no but and if after that. Anyways, let me give you some details of this NBC's report. So Russia will not make concessions on 3 points of US President Donald Trump's peace plan, NBC News reports. According to Lenta.ru, it is noted that the first point is the territory of Donbass. Yet again, they are still focused, by the way, for whatever reason, on Donbass and Donbass only, while significant parts of Zaporozhye and Kharkov region, Zaporozhye and Kherson region, has to be still liberated. It's a Russian territory based on Russian constitution, so those territories have to be liberated that are temporarily occupied by NATO and NATO proxies. Correct? So why they always talk about Donbass? I don't get it. But anyways, so it is noted that first point is the territory of Donbass. The second is the limitation of the number of armed forces of Ukraine. And the third is recognition of their territories occupied by the Russian army, liberated by the Russian army, by the United States and Europe as Russian territories. I mean, Lenta.ru needs to check on their editors, because what they are writing, which territories Russia is occupying, I'm interested. Are they sure Russia is occupying anything there? Because I am not. Absolutely not. Anyways, maybe Lenta.ru was trying to present her NBC's viewpoint, right? But then they should make it more clear that this is what NBC is saying. This is not what we are saying, right? But anyways, yet again, I'm sharing with you this information just to highlight the attitude in the West, that somehow it's Russia that has to agree on freaking concessions. I mean, seriously? We beat the crap out of collective West, man. Entire, like 40 plus countries. 40 plus countries that allied themselves to this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky, officially allied themselves, did whatever they could to defeat Russia. They are using best militaries they can use, which is our brainwashed brothers and sisters in this former Soviet Republic, Ukraine, because if anyone knows how to fight, it's a Russian, and they are Russians, by the way. They've been just brainwashed, and they now are believing some of them, or many of them even, they are believing now that they are descendants of freaking pharaohs or Vikings or even Sarmatians, by the way, Alans, and that kind of nonsense. If you go in Ukraine and talk to those Nazis, man, you're going to go nuts, because it's unbelievable. All the beliefs, these nonsensical beliefs that those people were indoctrinated into. But anyways, factually speaking, NATO, collective West, which is wider than NATO, right? Using best military they can use, most capable battle force they can use, and sending weapons for hundreds of billions of dollars, right? And they still lose. They lost, right? And somehow in the West, still this narrative being pushed that it's a Russia that has to agree on a concession. I mean, really? Really? I don't think so. And that's why I think it is long overdue, by the way, that Moscow start using more direct language. Diplomacy is great, of course, but I think sometimes for more clarification, straightforward language will do the better job, right? Moscow have to say, you know what, just capitulate, man. Let's not mess around the situation. Capitulate. Period, right? You wanted to destroy us, you failed. Acknowledge this. Because you do it now, it's going to be less painful than when you will do it tomorrow or day after. We should tell them how the things are, man, right? Anyways, let's continue. And as a sort of a bargaining chip, by the way, Western so-called media is still pushing some false narratives. For example, Politico come up with the article that US tell the EU to hand back frozen Russian assets. They still think that this 300 freaking billion that they are about to steal is more important for Russia or Russian leadership than the dignity of the country, lives of their Russian citizens, and the strategical interests of Russia. They don't understand that it's a Western world that is focused on money that much, man. It's a Western world where people were indoctrinated in this evil idea that you only are successful if you have money. They are worshipping money, man, in the West, literally worshipping money. And they think everyone is like that. No, man, we don't give a fuck about this 300 billion, man, right? You stole those money. I mean, you have some investments here in Russia. We will confiscate those investments and give it to whoever lost those assets, right, in Europe. Whoever on the Russian side lost the investments. It's, of course, Central Bank of the Russian Federation, and also tens of thousands of ordinary Russian citizens that actually invested in the West, by the way. Small, whatever savings they had, like 20, 30, $50,000, right? Many people in the West don't really understand that from this 300 billion that everybody is talking about, only about 200 billion is central banks assets. The rest is ordinary people, ordinary Russian citizens that are not under sanctions, nothing, right? But they cannot access their investments. And the West is threatening on daily basis that they're going to steal these assets of ordinary families, ordinary households, by the way, that were not strategic enough, right? While deciding that, well, it makes sense to invest in the Western economies, man. That was, of course, a failed judgment on their behalf, but nevertheless, it's their asset, and no one should be able to steal it. But anyway, that's a whole different story. You know, when you're dealing with the West, you should expect anything, right? So yes, that's yet another false narrative that West gonna push now. That as a bargaining chip, you know, US is using now this topic of 300 billion. You know, we will give you these assets half or 80% or 50% or less. You know, just let's, you know, agree on our terms. No, man, we don't give a fuck. Take it. Just take it. We will deal with the situation anyways, right? You have 300 billion investments in Russia. Well, those investments will be confiscated and given to Russian investors that gonna lose their assets in the West. That's it, man. So this is not really something that we care that much. Question I have personally is why on earth, by the way? Okay, ordinary households, they did not know better. But for God's sake, man, when Russian president, some 15 years ago, man, if no longer than that, when Russian President Vladimir Putin was telling to all these freaking oligarchs and everybody, be careful when you are dealing with the West, because you are investing there billions and billions and billions, and they might come when you will have no access to your assets. They might fucking steal it. And despite these warnings of a president of the country, by the way, who knows better, right? Who knows? Because he has access to all the freaking information that is available, including classified one. Despite all the warnings from the Putin, these idiots did not listen, man, right? And they invested heavy in the West, and they lost it, as Russian president said. It is what it is. That's the only question I have, man. How come, for God's sake, where is the subordination after all? Maybe we actually need the Russian leadership to become a little more tougher, and when they say something, this something has to be done. It has to be ordered, not a recommendation. Because in the West, how Russia was painted. It's a dictatorship. It's a tyranny. That kind of nonsense, right? Which cannot be any further from the truth, by the way, because yet again, there are many occasions when Russian president directly telling these people, some from state institutions, some from private sector, that's what's going on, guys, right? I'm giving you information that you should use wisely, right? And they're not listening, man. There are quite often even situations when Russian president, by the way, is issuing decree to deal with certain situation in the country. I mean, just information from within that you might didn't know, especially in the Western world where Russia only painted as some dictatorship or something. There are quite often situations when a Russian president has issued a decree to deal with certain situation, year passes. And then this topic comes up again. And president himself is kind of shocked. What the hell, man? I think I did issue a decree to deal with this stuff. What the hell, man? Why things are not done yet? And then when president has to take care of the situation again, well, then some people usually losing their jobs, right? But jobs only, man. If you think those people who did not act on the president's orders are ending up in a taiga and warming up the air, no, man. In worst case scenario for them, they are losing freaking job. In best case scenario, they are not even losing job. They are just apologizing. Oh, they will pay attention now. And that's it. They continue to stay on their positions. That's how things are done, by the way. You tell me now, is Russian president actually dictator and a tyrant? No, man. No. And maybe he should be, man, more strict. I'm not saying that dictatorship is good, no, but maybe he should be more stricter, especially in regards to state institutions and their leadership, so that they will never forget about subordination. So anyways, in the West, they're going to still push this narrative. I have seen quite a number of articles, also reports, by the way, in Western media that, well, this frozen Russian assets is a leverage that West has. No, man, it's not a leverage. It's a weight, it's a dead weight on the West itself, right? Because they already destroyed their reputation while messing around these Russian investments, while stealing profits from the Russian investments. And once they will steal investments itself, man, you're going to see a storm that will come after that, because whoever going to trust Western financial and banking system, man? Only morons, right? Only complete morons, man. Everyone else will begin withdrawing their assets, and their process already has started. Process has started, isn't it? Anyways, before meeting with Witkoff, by the way, and Kushner, Russian president made quite interesting statements. Actually, he was, I believe, participating in a VTB forum. VTB is the second biggest lender here in Russia. And he gave the speech there, I believe, and then he gave an interview to he spoke with the journalists. And at one point, he was asked about all these threats from the Europe, about war with Russia, about hostilities and stuff. And Russian president said if Europe all of a sudden wants to start a war, and if it does starts a war, then very rapidly there might be a situation when we have no one in Europe with whom to negotiate. I think this is one of the very few occasions when Russian president actually threatened, indirectly or maybe even directly, threatened the Western ruling class. Because he actually said that, well, if Europe starts the war, if European elite starts the war, then very soon then we might see a situation when there is no one left in that same Europe with whom we can negotiate. So what's going to happen to them? They're going to disappear, I guess, right? And this was clearly yet another hint from Russian side, my interpretation, by the way, that if these psychos that are in charge of West, especially in Europe, think that they're going to launch war against Russia and Moscow will do nothing or will not use nuclear weapons, they are mistaken. I said quite a few times before that on several occasions, Russian leadership has said it quite directly, that everyone should understand that if NATO or European NATO member states, all or some of them, will launch a war against Russia, then Moscow will definitely use whatever means are necessary to deal with their enemy, including nuclear weapons, right? Because everyone should keep in mind that in case of NATO, we are talking about dozens of countries. Even in Europe, by the way, there is dozens of NATO member states, right? There. So no one should expect that Russia will only engage in warfare with Europe if, yet again, Europeans start the war only with the conventional warfare. No, it's not happening. We have nukes and we will use nukes. I think that's what indirectly Russian president said. But you know what? I have short video, and let me share with you this short video, and you'll be the judge, by the way, what Putin meant by making this statement.
At 100 times, we have no plans of fighting against Europe. But if Europe wants to fight and if they start this fight, then we are ready right now. There is no doubt about this. But the only question is, if Europe starts the war, unleashes this war, because that's not Ukraine. With Ukraine, we use some surgical means. We are trying to be really careful. Because you understand why. This is not a war in the direct sense of the word. And Europe, all of a sudden, wants to start a war, and if it does start a war, then very rapidly there might be a situation where we have no one to negotiate with.
So I think President of Russian Federation was quite clear there. He was quite clear, isn't it? If European ruling class suddenly starts the war, then soon situation may be created when Russia will have no counterparts from European side to negotiate with. I mean, you cannot be any more clear, by the way, right? But unfortunately, we should also keep in mind that at this point, because all the acts of wars that West committed against Russia, because Russia didn't retaliate on those NATO countries, these statements from Russian side is not being taken seriously. This is also something that, yes, we cannot ignore. That's the reality. They don't care what Russian president is saying, you know. They just don't care, unfortunately. And this is very dangerous. This is very dangerous because they think Russia is bluffing or will do nothing. They will escalate. They will actually escalate. Dear friends, I think it will be interesting to share, interesting for the community, if I will share some key points about other statements that Russian president made. TASS news agency has sort of a digest about it here. So on the liberation of Krasnoarmeysk, which is Pokrovsk, and the progress of their special military operation. Russian President said Krasnoarmeysk or Pokrovsk in the DPR, liberated by the Russian armed forces, had and still has a special significance for both sides, because it is, among other things, a major infrastructure facility connected to their entire network of means of communication with the region. This city was and is given great importance. Russian president said there about Pokrovsk and the importance of this city. Also, he said Krasnoarmeysk is a good base for solving all the tasks of their central military district. From here, the Russian army can easily move in all directions that their general staff deems most promising. The city was a powerful fortified area of Kiev regime's forces, but today it is completely in the hands of Russian army. The right bank and the left bank parts of Kupiansk, which is in the Kharkov region, are under full control of the Russian armed forces, President said. And this is, I guess, his reaction on recent statements of Zelensky when in France, by the way, literally 2 days ago in France, Zelensky said that Kupiansk is controlled by Kiev regime, which is insane, man. Which is insane. What the hell? And Russian president once again, make it clear that no, guys, Kupiansk is completely liberated by Russian forces. There might be some small groups of trapped, pockets of resistance here and there, but city, generally speaking, is in Russian hands. Kupiansk, Uzlovaya will be completely liberated in a few days. So there is a area on the southern eastern side of Kupiansk, on the left bank of Oskol River, where significant number of Kiev regime's troops are trapped, and their operations still are underway to neutralize these encircled formations of their enemy. And those hostile troops, with the small groups, they are still trying every day on numerous occasions, dozens of times, to escape from encirclement, to somehow reach Oskol River and cross it, and then reach Kiev-controlled territories on the other side. But most of these attempts are failing. On the attacks on the Russian tankers in the Black Sea, Russian president said Ukrainian attacks on the tankers in the Black Sea constitute piracy. Attacks on the tankers, not even in the neutral waters, but in a special economic zone of another state, Turkey, are piracy. It's okay. Russian president use softer language. It's a freaking terrorism, man. It's a terrorism, right? And it's not just the Kiev regime. We all know perfectly well, and that's why I'm saying it is time, man, to use more direct language. Everyone knows all these maritime attacks that formally conducts Kiev regime is orchestrated by London. It's a UK's militaries and UK's intelligence community that is orchestrating these attacks. So maybe it is time, for God's sake, to say it as it is, man. We all know this, right? We all know it's London, so let's say it. But no, it's Ukrainian attacks. It's not Ukrainian attacks, man. It's British attacks. British attacks. They use Kiev regime as their proxy. Without British assistance, who actually believes that Kiev regime would be able to either acquire these maritime drones with a range of hundreds of miles, by the way, in some cases potentially thousands of miles, and without British assistance, who believes that Kiev regime would be able to use actually these drones all over the Black Sea? They have no satellite intelligence. They have no satellites, by the way, whatsoever, right? They have no satellite navigation. They have nothing. Everything comes from NATO, to be more precise, from British, right? So let's say it as it is, man. I mean, let's be no-nonsense people, man. Let's be no-nonsense people. Let's say it as it is, man. Some might like it, some might not, but who gives a fuck, man? Russia will consider the possibility of retaliatory measures against the vessels from the countries that assist Ukraine in the piracy, in the terrorism, the most radical way to stop such actions would be to cut Ukraine from the sea. Then it will be impossible for it to engage in a piracy at all. And well, this is interesting, by the way. This is hint from Russian president that Nikolaev and Odessa regions are coming to Mother Russia. Yeah, that's what's have to happen, obviously. And will happen, 100%. I said how many times this conflict will end when Russian troops will reach borders of the Western Ukraine. When Russian troops will reach borders of the Western Ukraine, special military operation will be declared finalized, right? But before that, there might be a million other talks, like we saw yesterday between Vitkov and Putin, and there might be some other talks, but there will be no results, right? There will be no results because Western ruling class is not willing to capitulate yet. But they will. They will at one day, and that day may come when Russian troops will reach borders of the Western Ukraine. Maybe even sooner than that. If European ruling class will actually go ahead and attack Russia openly, then Western ruling class might capitulate much sooner. Much sooner. In response to Kyiv strikes on the tankers, Russia will expand its strikes on Ukrainian ports and on the ships sailing at those ports. Russian president said so. Yet again, strong warnings. Unfortunately, no one or almost no one takes seriously anymore any warnings from Russia, no matter who is issuing these warnings. But nevertheless, that's what Russian president said. On inviting Western media to visit the liberated territories, Russian president also spoke. So Russia invites foreign journalists, including Ukrainian ones, to visit Krasnoarmeysk or Pokrovsk, by the way, and Kupiansk, so they can see the situation with their own eyes. If anyone has any doubts, we've already spoken about this. I've already suggested your foreign colleagues and even Ukrainian ones, please, we are ready to grant Ukrainian journalists this right to visit the city of Krasnoarmeysk and see for themselves what's happening there and who's really in control of this town. I mean, what else do you need for confirmation, right? That both cities, Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, are controlled Russian troops. President of Russia is saying, just come on, man, let's go and see. That's the best way. You have some doubts. Western so-called journalists or Ukrainian so-called journalists, come and see if you want to. No one gonna come, obviously, by the way. You think Western elite is gonna allow so-called journalists of theirs to accept this invitation from Russia? No, of course not. Alternative media outlets might actually do it, but MSM, Western MSM, I don't think so. But let's see. Also, Russian president stated a certain level of danger remains in Krasnoarmeysk for journalists, but Russian war correspondents work there, meaning Western ones can too, which is true, by the way. I mean, work of war journalists is an extremely difficult one, right, and dangerous one. But nevertheless, they are trained journalists that are working in the conflict zones, right? So they are familiar with the risks. So if Western journalists want to come, Moscow is open for opportunity, even those so-called journalists from Ukraine. The Russian Federation is ready to show foreign journalists all the neighborhoods in Krasnoarmeysk or Pokrovsk, by the way, and Kupiansk. We will do everything to ensure their safety. We are ready to take them around all the neighborhoods in Pokrovsk, Krasnoarmeysk, he said. The same applies to Kupiansk. So you cannot be any more clear about it on that. On the threats of war from the West, Russian president said Moscow has not intended and does not intend to fight with Europe, which it regularly repeats. We are not going to fight with Europe. I have already said this 100 times. If Europe suddenly starts a war, there can be no doubts about Russia's readiness to respond right now, if necessary. Russia is acting surgically in Ukraine, it's not a war. However, European attack would be different. If Europe suddenly starts a war with us, I think it would be very quick. This is not Ukraine. We are acting surgically with Ukraine, carefully. It's not a war in the literal modern sense of the word. If Europe starts a war with Russia, Moscow will soon have no one from the opposite side to negotiate with. Russian president said, and you see at least part of his statements on this matter in the video that I presented to you just a few minutes ago. So, I mean, it is strong words, man, very strong words, very strong warning. But I'm afraid the European ruling class not going to listen. Western ruling class will not listen, man, because they think Russia is bluffing. You know, if anyone in the West had any doubts that Russian leadership is bluffing, and they are pushing this narrative for many, many years now, isn't it? That Putin is bluffing, whole Russian leadership is bluffing, everyone is bluffing. They are pushing this narrative for so long that they're actually believing in this now, right? And if anyone had any doubts, then after UK and US orchestrated attacks on Russian nuclear triad and Russia didn't responded, well, after that, probably no one has no doubts in the West. They are absolutely sure, seems like, in their own false narrative that Russia is bluffing only and will never do anything against the West. They will find out, man. If they think this way, obviously they will further escalate, right? That's a trajectory. They will continue to escalate, and at some point they will most likely trigger direct clashes between European armed forces and Russian armed forces. And well, it's gonna be quick, man, and decisive. And there might be no one left from the Western ruling class or European ruling class with whom we can negotiate. It is what it is, man, right? On European policy towards Ukraine, Russian president said Europeans are offended. Europeans are offended that they have been excluded from the negotiations on Ukraine, but no one excluded them. They excluded themselves, Putin said, and he's correct, by the way. Take a look at the behavior of the European leadership, European elites. You know, they did it to themselves, no one else. Europe has no peace agenda. It's on the side of war, which is also true. Europe is hindering US President Donald Trump's peace efforts, and that is the goal of all European hindering President Trump. Putin said European countries are trying to put forward demands on Ukraine that are absolutely unacceptable to Russia, and they understand this. Europe still lives under the illusion of inflicting strategical defeat on Russia, although it understands in its head that this is impossible. They took wishful thinking for reality at the time, but they cannot admit it to themselves. They do not want to. President acknowledged, and this is true. This is true. They themselves believe in their own false narratives, in their own false propaganda, right? And they are cowards, man. They are too weak to face the reality now. Yeah. And about the leadership of Ukraine, the Kiev authorities act as if they live somewhere on another planet. They are unaware of current economic developments, much less the war. They are constantly begging for money, and this is true, man. Also, this is factual. Zelensky, like a few days ago, was in Sweden, isn't it? He begged there so much that Swedes agreed to give him 100 and something million. This time, just millions, by the way, not the billions, but they will give him billions too. They give just if Zelensky has enough time, by the way, probably he will beg for $1 billion or two too, you know. And then he went in Ireland, isn't it? He begged there also, quite successfully. I mean, most successful beggar ever, by the way, right? And he begged there too for 100 and something something million from Irish taxpayers too. It is what it is, man. These European so-called elites, man, despite all these corruption scandals and issues that Kiev regime is facing, they are still allocating hundreds of millions of their own taxpayers' money, as if it's their pocket money, man. And unfortunately, people are keeping quiet. Where is the protests in Ireland, by the way? How many people in Ireland are homeless? Like 1,000, 10,000, 50,000? How many families in Ireland need some assistance to keep up with the life? 1,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000? And this 150 million or whatever Irish leadership allocated to Kiev regime, for how many people this would be tremendous support if this money was allocated for some assistance to Irish people, man. But yet again, it is what it is, man. It's not just, who cares about hundreds of millions, man? There are hundreds of billions of dollars were stolen from Western taxpayers, right? By their own governments to prolong this proxy war, and process still going on. TASS news agency is also reporting, new friends, that despite all their devastation of a NATO proxy Kiev regime, despite all the setbacks that they are experiencing on the battlefield, according to SVR, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, France is still exploring options for direct involvement in their conflict in Ukraine. Those people are suicidal, man. Macron has to be removed from French leadership and whole his government and all the other psychos, man. Because they might actually trigger a war, man, I'm telling you. And what French people are doing, I have nothing against French people, man, as I do have nothing against English people or British people or German people or, I don't know, Dutch people or Swedes or Norwegians, or I don't have anything against any people in Europe, man. And therefore, it is even more heartbreaking to see these very people that I'm talking about are these zombified, man. That they cannot, seems like they are seeing these developments and cannot realize that their governments are pushing them towards the war with Russia. Do they want to fight us, really? I mean, ordinary people in Europe, let's say. I mean, French people, I mean, do they want to fight us, really? I don't know, man. Maybe they do. Who knows? Maybe they want, or they seek some revenge for what happened to Napoleon or something. Maybe in their psyche, they actually, dreaming about war with Russia. I don't know. Maybe Germans also want war with Russia to revenge for Third Reich, for decimation of the Third Reich and Nazi Germany. Maybe they do, man, but I have some doubts about it, And yet again, maybe I'm wrong, Maybe I'm wrong, but propaganda does some crazy shit, man. And maybe people in Europe have been indoctrinated in this Russia hate so much so that now they themselves seek war with Russia. I don't know. The elites in Europe, they do, clearly, and SVR is reporting about it, right? But maybe people are on the same page with them. I mean, who knows? Paris continues to seek ways to directly engage in the Ukrainian conflict, according to statement from the press bureau of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR. And we have some quotes here. France is eager to send its troops to Ukraine. The press bureau of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service reports that according to information received by the SVR, France continues to seek options for direct involvement in the Ukrainian conflict. This is in particular the purpose of government decree number 2025-1030 of October 31st, 2025, which authorizes the use of private military companies to provide assistance to third country in a situation of armed conflict. Their statement reads, the press bureau noted that even the unintended European average person has no doubts about which country is meant. Okay, it's Ukraine, of course. Ukraine's mobile air defense units and their F-16s at its disposal are unable to intercept Russian air targets. Mastering their Mirage and other equipment, Mirage is French fighter jet, and other equipment requires time and high qualification. This is why Kiev will need foreign private military companies equipped with the modern Western, primarily French weaponry, as we are explained. However, the press bureau of Russian Foreign Intelligence Service emphasized that Paris should not delude itself into thinking that this is giving itself a free hand and simultaneously escaping responsibility for their participation of its military in the conflict. The presence of French private military companies in Ukraine modestly referred to in their aforementioned decree as reference operators for the Ministry of the Armed Forces will be viewed by Moscow as France's direct participation in military operations against Russia. Consequently, French private military companies will become their primary legitimate target of the Russian armed forces, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service stated. And okay, I mean, it is understandable that once French private military companies or private military companies from whichever other country arrive, once they are deployed on the battlefield against Russia, they will be targeted. Okay, we understand this, but why not those countries themselves? That's the question, isn't it? If we are saying that deployment of French military is disguised as mercenaries or assets of private military company will be seen by Moscow as direct involvement of France, then that means France is in war, open war against Russia, right? So why we are not denuclearizing France? Why we are not taking out France's nuclear and military in general capabilities? We can do it. It's maximum like, I don't know, 30 minutes, 1 hour. Like literally, it takes only like 30 minutes, maybe 50, 60 minutes max. And France no longer has army. France no longer has submarines, navy. France no longer has any military capabilities whatsoever. Same can be done to UK, by the way. It's a 1 hour maximum, right? There is 2 countries in Europe that hold nuclear weapons. None of them, France and UK, none of them can be trusted with these devastating weapon systems, right? Both these countries are acting extremely responsibly, and both these countries are engaged in a war against Russia. So only question I have personally is why these countries have not been dealt already, man. We can do it, isn't it? If we were some freaking banana republic, then okay, I mean, what you gonna do, man? But we are Russia, right? It takes 1 hour, literally, man, less than 1 hour, right? How long Russian hypersonic missiles will need to reach some naval base somewhere in France or in UK, by the way, where, let's say, at least several their nuclear capable submarines are located. It's like it's a minutes, right? 5-10 minutes, that's it. They might have another 1 or 2 nuclear capable submarines somewhere at the sea, and I'm quite sure Russian militaries are tracking locations of those submarines, and they know perfectly well where they are. So they can be targeted out at the sea simultaneously, obviously. And UK don't really has a nuclear, nuclear triad. UK fully relies on its this Vanguard class nuclear submarines, right? When it comes to their nuclear capability, but France does has not just nuclear submarines, but also weapon systems that ground and air-based nuclear weapons, basically, right? And we can take out those bases too, where those nuclear capable systems are located and nuclear weapons. It's just a freaking like 30 minutes, man. And if you think World War III gonna start and the US gonna launch its missiles against Russia, no, man, no. World War III is already started, right? It's in its kinetic phase already, but it does not mean that we're gonna go full nuclear. Anyways, no, we not. We don't. Yes, some limited nuclear strikes might happen here and there, but not the full exchange because no one really wants to see extinction level event, right? So US will stay out. US, well, I'm 100% convinced, by the way, if Russia demilitarizes France and the UK, US will stay out. And by the way, trust me, once France and UK are demilitarized, Europe gonna behave really, really differently. They're gonna behave like, wow, they finally see the reality, you know? Western elites, that is. Western ruling class and European ruling class gonna act adequately first time in many, many centuries. Because they will realize that, you know what, they are not the main force in this world. This world is not circling around them or this universe. And yet again, it's just 30 minutes, man. That's the question that I bothers me. You know, it's only taking 30 minutes, man. Let's demilitarize with maximum attention to minimize casualties among French and British militaries. Let's try to minimize their casualties, right? But nevertheless, we have to demilitarize. We have to do what we have to do. It's a 30 freaking minutes. Both countries no longer have an opportunity to use nuclear blackmail, right? That's it. And Europe would behave adequately from that moment and forever. Why we are not doing this, man? When both countries, UK and France, are engaged in a war against Russia. Both. And hardly anyone, either in France or UK, have any doubts that their countries are actually engaged in this war and are involved in the killing of the Russians. So they will understand why Russia retaliated. They will know why Russia retaliated. They would not be happy about it, obviously, but they will understand the reasons, right? France and UK are committed numerous acts of war against Russia, and finally Moscow said enough is enough, and take the action. But this is not happening, man, unfortunately. Unfortunately, this is not happening, right? Not as long as Putin is Russian president. When someone else will be Russian president, then Russia's attitude, Russia's policies might be different. But the current president is extremely peaceful, man. Putin is Western elites have to prey on Putin so that Putin to stay in power as long as possible, right? Because Western elites are only reason why they are still alive, by the way, Western ruling class, is because Putin is so peaceful human being and restrained human being, you know, because yeah, chances that next Russian president will be that peaceful, man, is next to zero, I think, right? This is just a unique instance, by the way. Russia never had this peaceful president ever, right? And this restrained leader, not just president, but leader, by the way. I don't think Russia ever had this peaceful, peace-loving president. Even though in the West, by the way, all they do is demonizing Putin. Now, Putin is evil, man. Putin is this and Putin is that. I mean, really? You are alive only because Putin is this peace-loving, man. right? And is peaceful. If someone like me was a Russian president, then I mean, then the situation would be very different, and we will actually have no one in the West with whom we can negotiate because they all would be dead, literally. You know, that's how it is. Anyways, let's continue. By the way, Axios reported that earlier that Witkoff, on his way back to US, might have a meeting with Zelensky in Europe. All these days, there are speculations. Some media outlets were speculating that Witkoff will have a meeting with Zelensky before he will visit Moscow. That meeting did not happen, even though Witkoff and Kushner were in Ireland, right? But I think Zelensky arrived in Ireland when Witkoff and Kushner left. And according to reports from this morning, even though Axios reported that maybe meeting with Zelensky will take place on 3rd of December when Witkoff and Kushner will be on their way back, it's not happening. It's not happening. And Zelensky is heading back to Ukraine, according to Euronews. And Witkoff, according to TASS news agency, plane of Witkoff and Kushner already are somewhere over Canada, probably already landed in US. So there's gonna be no meeting with Zelensky, which is understandable. What they're gonna talk about? I mean, really, I don't know. Also interesting news from Netherlands, right? The Netherlands intend to close Ukrainian refugee reception centers in the near future. This was announced by Monique Keizer, acting Minister for Migration and Asylum Issues. Currently, about 3/4 of the approximately 135,000 Ukrainians who have arrived in the country are accommodated in these municipal centers. The authorities state that maintaining these facilities is too costly for the budget. The cabinet is already preparing a plan for Ukrainians to transition to independent living, including mandatory payment for education and medical insurance. Earlier in The Hague, it was also announced the development of a voluntary return program for refugees to Ukraine, which they plan to launch in May 2026. So as I have said, a very, very long time. European countries, one after another, are beginning to prepare ground for either mass deportation of Ukrainians or to force them as much as possible without going into extremes, just to make the life for them so difficult that Ukrainians themselves will flee for Ukraine. I don't think this will work out. Because no matter how difficult European elite is going to make a life for Ukrainians in Europe, their life in Kiev-controlled territory is going to be much more difficult, right? And much more dangerous because they, especially for military-age men, because they going to be forcefully mobilized and thrown into trenches and then die there. So any conditions in Europe is better than being grave. Correct? So therefore, I don't really think these half steps that the European leadership is committing to force Ukrainians out, especially military age Ukrainians. I don't think this will work. And either eventually, when they will realize this, either they will actually go ahead with their mass deportations that they don't really want to do now for media purposes, that they are Democrats, isn't it? They are liberals, and now they are deporting these people to die in the trenches. But eventually they will. Eventually they might actually go ahead and do this, because yet again, level of desperation on part of European elites, European ruling class is tremendous. They are losing, by the way. They are losing this proxy war against Russia. And little by little, but this realization is settling in And every day, these European elites are becoming more and more crazy, right? Because they don't know how to live with this truth that they lost. Eventually, they will have to, you know, or they might try, and they're actually out of, yet again, out of desperation, out of their craziness, they might actually try to launch an open war with Russia. And in that case, well, as Russian president said yesterday, things will end very quickly for Western ruling class. And there will be no one left there in the West with whom Russia can negotiate. TASS news agency is also reporting that last night, Russian air defense systems on duty intercepted 102 drones that was launched by Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky with assistance of NATO to strike deep into Russian territory. 26 drones were intercepted over the Belgorod region, 22 over the Bryansk region, 21 over the Kursk, 16 over Rostov, 7 over Astrakhan region, 6 over Saratov, 4 over Voronezh regions. By the way, unfortunately, quite a vast geography of this on these strikes, mostly southern Russia, as it is practically always the case. TASS news agency is also reporting that Russian Defense Ministry confirmed the liberation of Zelyony Gai settlement on the eastern side of Gulay-Pole in the Zaporozhye region, and the Dobropolye settlement, which is also in the Zaporozhye region, but on the northern side of Gulay-Pole. Meanwhile, Lithuania, this Baltic tiger, by the way, or Chihuahua, which one you prefer? So Lithuania plans to bring back mandatory military service. This Baltic tiger plans to conscript 5,000 young men next year. 5,000 strong army, by the way. Okay, how terrifying. And I took this screenshot from RT, by the way. RT report about it, and RT's comment is that St. Petersburg's police force is still bigger than Lithuanian army, gonna be bigger than Lithuanian, this army of conscripts. But they are very noisy, man. They love to bark, these Chihuahuas, man. Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, they love to bark, man. It's like, I don't know, you know? This their national sport nowadays, seems like, or national characteristic, to bark always, you know, as loud as they can. That's what Chihuahuas do, isn't it? They are demons, those Chihuahua dogs, isn't it? They don't like nobody, man. They bark on everybody, and all it takes is just to tap, and that's about it, you know. Just like 2 fingers, man. Just, you know, a little bit, chick, and that's it. No barks, and that's what Baltic states really are, man. It only takes like just a little to make them be quiet, right? And they might actually trigger that one day. They might actually trigger such a response one day, because they are just too freaking noisy, man, and everyone is sick and tired of this noise. RT is also reporting that there is a corruption scandal in EU bureaucracy. By the way, former top EU diplomat was detained in anti-fraud raid. Let me give you some details on that. So the former vice president of the European Commission and the head of the bloc's foreign service, Federica Mogherini, is being held by authorities aimed police investigation into alleged misuse of EU funds. Belgium and French media reported on Tuesday Belgian police have carried out searches at their headquarters of the European External Action Service in Brussels. Oh, they should detain that Kaja Kallas too, man. I mean, they should detain Kaja Kallas. That's also a very noisy creature, man. Very noisy. So Belgian police have carried out searches at their headquarters of the European External Action Service in Brussels, of which Mogherini was a chief from 2014 to 2019, and the colleague of Europe in Bruges, where she has been College of Europe in Brugge, where she has been rector since 2020. Several private residences have also been searched. Reuters reported, citing the European Public Prosecutor's Office. Police have seized documents and detained three more people on suspicion of procurement fraud, corruption, and a criminal conflict of interests, according to sources familiar with the case cited by Euro, European TV. Belgium outlet El Echo reported that Mogherini was among their detained. Okay. Senior EU official Stefano Sannino, who served as Secretary General of this foreign ministry, basically of EU, under the Mogherini when their diplomatic academy was established, and now heads the European Commission's department for the Middle East, North Africa, and the Gulf, has also been taken into custody. Another College of Europe employee from their executive education department was also detained, according to unnamed person cited by this Euro TV. The probe reportedly focuses on the college's 3.2 million euro or $3.7 million purchase of a building on Spanjar the Straat in Brugge in 2022, shortly before receiving 654,000 euros in funding from their EEAS. Authorities suspect their institution may have had their access to confidential information, undermining fair competition. No formal charges have been filed so far. Investigators are reportedly examining whether the college or its representatives had a prior knowledge of a public tender for the EU Diplomatic Academy, a training program for European diplomats in Brugge, funded by the EEAS. And this EEAS is European External Action Service, so-called foreign ministry, let's say, right, which is led by Kaja Kallas now. And well, something is happening there, by the way. I don't think this case is necessarily about corruption, but corruption is used as a standard model, by the way, to take down certain individuals or to send a message. That's what Western elites do, isn't it? That's how systems are built there. They are not against corruption. Everybody is corrupt there. But if one day someone takes a step left or the step right, then this corruption is used. All the information is being collected, isn't it, about all the wrongdoing of these so-called officials or whatever they are. And when time is right, they are this information that was collected on them is used against them, right? Everyone can be blackmailed in the West. That's how system is built, by the way. Whoever is pulling the strings, they know everything about everyone. They can blackmail anyone, and if necessary, they can take down anyone with documents about the wrongdoing, corruption, or something else, right? Corruption is just one way. Take a look what was happening with the Epstein story. In that case, they were using most disgraceful ways to have some compromise on the people, right? On the most disgraceful people also, by the way. No normal human being would ever end up in that Epstein files, right? No normal good human being ever be there anywhere near. But whoever was there, you can know they are all disgusting humans, all of them, right? No decent human being would ever step close to that disgraceful rig, man. It's a It's тошнотворно даже говорить об этом. It's sickening to even talk about this dirty, filthy creatures, by the way, that were in that Epstein whole story, and who knows how many such Epstein stories are also all over the Western world and not being disclosed yet. It's Western elites is a disgraceful creatures, man. It's a most filthy. I mean, most filthy elements in human history, and that's what Western elites are, man. All of them, all of them. There are no decent human beings there, man. None, not even one. They are all absolute filth, right? And in this particular case, well, either this person, Mogherini or whatever the freaking name is, Mogherini, either this Mogherini and her affiliates were engaged in some activity that actual decision makers in the West did not like, and they are taking them down, or maybe they are taking them down to send a message to some other people, maybe to Kaya Kallas, by the way. I remind you that according to reports, there is a war. Civil war is going on inside the EU unelected bureaucracy among those filthy creatures, right? And reports are that Ursula washing machine is kind of beating their crap out of Kaya Kallas and her team. And work is in progress to remove that Kaya Kallas from her position. And to do so, by the way, they have to deal with whatever forces were behind her, behind the Kallas. Because obviously, Kaya Kallas ended up in a position of top diplomat in Europe because certain influential groups in Europe wanted her there, right? So some civil war is going on inside these dirty bastards, man, that European elites are, actually. And this situation with Federica Mogherini might be just part of it. And probably it is. RIA Novosti is also reporting that US, according to Donald Trump, will soon begin targeting drug traffickers on land. He spoke about Venezuela once again. Yeah, he threatened like second or third time now, isn't it? That there are going to be some strikes on the land. And he also said that US will target not just Venezuela. They are using terminology like they will target drug mafia beyond Venezuela and that kind of nonsense. Everyone understands drugs have nothing to do with all this escalation in the Caribbean, literally nothing to do with it, right? Because a major number one drug trafficker in this world is CIA. Second is the Pentagon. So we know that drugs have nothing to do with all this escalation in the Caribbean, because otherwise you would see FBI conducting searches in CIA and Pentagon, but it's not happening, right? So it's all about and some people are saying it's about oil, some people say it's about this and that, rare earth and stuff. Partially yes. Of course, Venezuela has a lot of oil, by the way, and it's a factor, but not the main factor. Not the main factor, by the way. In reality, what is going on is that US ruling class needs to, and they are quite open about it, they want to focus on China. Right? They are losing competition with China on a geopolitical scale all over the places, right? Everywhere. The US is in no position to compete with China. And they don't like it. They want to deter China. They see only chance they can maintain some level of relevance on geopolitical scale if they are deterring China. And to do so, they are starting from their backyard. American ruling class is starting from their backyard, right? This process, because it's going to be difficult for them to be focused on Pacifics, Oceania, right, global south, while on their backyard, Chinese influence is only increasing on year-on-year terms, right? In Latin America, for example. And so they are starting this process, right, to reestablish their strict control over the Latin American countries. And they're going to attack Venezuela. Venezuela is just one among many others that are going to follow. And when they are threatening with attacks, they are threatening also, and first and foremost, Cuba, by the way. Cuba. Neocons obviously are behind this escalation, and their representative is whom in current administration? Marco Rubio, right? Marco Rubio is their dog, chain dog, right? And Rubio is Cuban descent, correct? So yes, they're going to attack Venezuela, and they are creating ground, basically, and false narratives to justify an attack on Cuba, potentially on other countries too, on Venezuela, by the way. They might go as far as to either orchestrate regime change in Brazil or to actually take action, military action against Brazil too. If you think that is, just impossible, really? When it comes to U.S. and terrorist activity worldwide, you think anything is impossible and off the table? No, man, no. Nothing is impossible. So yes, that's what they do, by the way. And one might ask her, yeah, but U.S. has already built up such a force, off coast of Venezuela. Why they did not attack yet? And I think main reason, and I don't know why no other channel in alternative media, at least, talking about this. I think main reason, or at least I missed it. I did not hear any other channel is talking about this connection. But I think a reason why U.S. did not attack Venezuela yet is that they are afraid. U.S. ruling class is afraid that if they did not reach some agreements with Russia, if they did not receive any guarantees from Russia that on a state level Moscow will seek no revenge against U.S., then Russia is going to help Venezuela in a way U.S. was engaged in Ukrainian crisis, right? And you know what that means. That means that potentially Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean Sea might turn into graveyard for U.S. Navy. U.S. might lose thousands of sailors. Fuck the vessels, by the way. Who cares? It's just a freaking metal, but they might use thousands of sailors. And Venezuelan land itself might turn into graveyard for U.S. ground forces. That's what they are afraid of. And even though U.S. is actively engaged with the European ruling class in this deception operation that they come up with together with this Trump's 28, 27, 19, 22 point peace plan, so-called peace plan, well, simultaneously, it seems to me that Washington is clearly looking for off-ramp, right? They are kind of looking for off-ramp because they lost interest for Ukraine. Seems to me that American ruling class actually lost interest for Ukraine. They are realizing that they lost it, right? They lost this war against Russia. So they have to get out, right? And maybe they are looking for ways. They are looking for off-ramp. And if behind the closed doors certain agreements will be reached between Washington and Moscow, if Washington will agree to Moscow on serious concessions, if Washington will say that after certain media campaign, after certain steps, basically, they will withdraw U.S. completely from this proxy war and stop any military aid to Kiev regime, any financial aid to military Kiev regime, any or to NATO, by the way, European NATO member states that then providing key regime, and if US will also stop any intelligence sharing, not just with key regime, but also with European NATO member states, right? So that this intelligence would not be used against Russia. In that case, Moscow might say, Putin might say, right, that as long as he is a president, he will seek no revenge on US on a state level. Which, by the way, does not mean that Russia will not assist people of Venezuela. But there is a massive difference when there is a state level involvement and involvement through proxies, right? Russia will help Venezuela anyways, right? But scale gonna be different. One thing is when you publicly sending the fleet towards Venezuela, right? To deliver anti-ship missiles, to deliver this and that. When you openly are saying that, well, we giving Venezuelan militaries like real-time intelligence, right? So that they can track movement of American Navy. And if, let's say, U.S. Aircraft carrier Ford is sunk, everyone would know it's Russia, right? Russia did it. Especially if you openly saying that you are sharing intelligence. But yet again, if US agrees on the concessions and does everything what will be required, Putin might say, okay, on state level, we will seek no revenge. But that's on a state level. When it comes to proxies or when it comes to private groups, well, they will be free, by the way, to do whatever they want. And that's why, according to reports, Russian PMC Wagner is already there in Venezuela. And there are different rumors. According to some, Russian PMCs even are helping to secure Maduro, to secure military leadership. Some are training, local special forces, preparing certain groups to conduct certain operations, right? No one actually knows. No one actually knows what Russian PMCs are doing there, but reports are that, yes, Russians are there and will help, independently of Moscow's decision-making process. Officially, Moscow will have nothing to do with it, right? That's why PMCs are quite useful, isn't it? To project the power. And I'm specifying on this because yesterday one member commented that, well, how come that if Washington agrees on concessions and this and that, then Moscow will not help Venezuela? No, Moscow will help Venezuela. One thing is to help. Second thing is to use Venezuela as a freaking proxy and to sacrifice, to do to Venezuela same as West did to Ukraine, right? And yet again, not being involved on a state level does not mean that Moscow will deter private groups to seek revenge. Private groups will do whatever they can to revenge their comrades, by the way, that they lost, or their loved ones, by the way, that they lost, right? How many civilians being killed, and how many Russian civilians being killed, by the way, with US weapons. So you can understand that relatives of those civilians will always seek revenge on America and Americans, right? US militaries, let's be clear, on US militaries and US leadership, right? And the Russian PMCs that lost their comrades, they will also seek revenge, always. And that's the difference, If Washington agrees on Russian terms, then Moscow will not seek revenge on a state level. But same time, Moscow will say, you know what, on a state level, okay, we are out. We will provide humanitarian aid to Venezuela. We will do whatever we can, but we would not be engaged militarily against you on a state level. But private military companies, private groups, it's their business, right? And I'm not going to get involved. That's what Moscow will say. So Venezuela will fight. If people of Venezuela fight, by the way, what I want to say is that if people of Venezuela, and I'm talking about people, I'm not talking about regime, I'm not talking about Maduro, who might be or might not be engaged in talks with the American side about his personal fate and safety, right? I'm not talking about regime or the regime's leadership. I'm talking about people. If people of Venezuela will fight, I am 100% convinced they will receive significant help from Russia. And I don't think it will matter for them. This help is coming officially from Russia or unofficially. Correct? And yet again, dear friends, I think US did not attack Venezuela. US did not launch this military campaign in the Caribbean that will be directed on numerous countries because they are still in talks with the Russian side. They still have no guarantees from Moscow, right? And I'm quite sure topic of Caribbean crisis was also discussed yesterday between Putin and Witkov. I'm 100% convinced on that they spoke about Caribbean situation also. 100%, by the way. No doubts in my mind, personally, right? So, yeah, let's see. Let's see what's going to happen. But my explanation why US didn't attack yet is that they are afraid that Russia might retaliate on them on the state level. Few more news, dear friends. Russia's Duma ratified a major defense treaty with India to deploy troops and equipment to each other's soil. MPs approved the agreement covering joint exercises, disaster relief, and humanitarian missions. It formalizes and deepens military cooperation between the two countries, two nations, basically. And well, good news, by the way, good news. I think it will make all the sense if Russia and India will sign a Mutual Protection Act. I think it will make sense, man, if Russia and India sign Mutual Protection Act, so that everyone would know if you attack Russia, you are attacking India also, and everyone will know if you are attacking India, you are attacking Russia also. And this might deter quite a few countries. This might deter every country, basically, in this world from committing some crazy stuff, including China and Pakistan. Just saying, Also, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has stated that the Serbian oil industry has announced that the Pačevo oil refinery has begun shutting down its production units due to a shortage of crude oil for processing. This came as a direct result of the ongoing US sanctions against the NIS of Serbia for its business connections with Russia. And I believe Russian side already stated, Russian company that cooperates with NIS already stated that they are willing to get out of the business, right? And sell their interests. And Belgrade was hoping that after that, US would lift sanctions, but maybe it did not work, by the way. Maybe it did not work. I don't know. But hopefully, Serbian refineries will find oil, and Serbian economy will not experience some massive difficulties due to lack of energy or something. Also, dear friends, there was reports that ExxonMobil, I saw reports that ExxonMobil, yes, that's the report. ExxonMobil wants to buy Lukoil's stake in Iraq's largest oil field. American oil company ExxonMobil has informed the Iraqi oil ministry of its intention to acquire controlling stake in Lukoil's El-Khor West Kurma field, reports Reuters, citing 5 official sources in Iraq. On December 1st, the Ministry of Oil announced on Facebook that it has begun negotiations with US companies to transfer control of the Western Kurna to the largest oil field in Iraq. Lukoil is developing it. The companies involved were not specified, and well, now we know. ExxonMobil is one of them, and you see how US does their things, by the way. They sanctioned the Russian energy majors, and now they are forcing these energy majors to sell their foreign shares, probably with a discount, right? To sell their foreign assets. And you think we can do any business with the current US leadership? I mean, seriously? We should treat them as our mortal enemies, man. We should treat US ruling class and European Euro ruling class as our mortal enemy. And we should do everything necessary to neutralize them, physically neutralize them. Because that's what our mortal enemies, that's how mortal enemies should be treated. Lukoil gonna lose big time now because this Israeli slut, Trump, this filth, imposed sanctions on Lukoil, right? Is it fair? I don't think so. So we should treat filth as such. It's a filth. And Trump and everybody in Trump's administration is a filth, a rubbish, and should be treated as such. And everybody in Western elites, generally speaking, everybody, no exceptions. There are no decent human being in the Western elites. None. Not a single one. All of them are human scum. Period. And sooner whole world realizes that, the better. You cannot deal with them as if they are some decent human beings. They are not, man. They are human scum, filth. Entire freaking so-called elites in the West and decent human beings, systems, they are built in a way that decent human beings are not allowed, right? Decent human being cannot be part of that system that is built in the West. That's how it is, man. Truth. That's facts. And there are also interesting news, I think, that China skyrockets towards number 1 in the tech exports, 2.1 trillion in 2024 alone, more than the combined total of Germany and the US that are on the second and third places. $2.1 trillion worth of tech exports from China. That's quite something, man. That's quite something. You know, no wonder Western ruling class is losing it, right? They are losing it. They are, you know, they might trying as much as they can to avoid facing reality, but at least intuitively they should understand, man. They should understand that they are losing, man. They were ruling the world almost entirely for the last 3 to 5 centuries, and they are losing the grip on this world and becoming literally day by day becoming less and less relevant, which is a good news for humanity, by the way, right? That's how it is. Okay, dear friends. Okay, that's about it. That's about it for a news segment. Relatively long news segment, 1 hour and 39 minutes, 1 hour and 40 minutes. But nevertheless, hopefully, news segment was informative, useful, interesting, entertaining. Hopefully, after all, this is a show, isn't it? And shows should be entertaining too, right? So hopefully you did liked it, and if so, please click that like button, leave some commentary. I forget to drop link to Rumble, by the way. Unfortunately, I forget. I did it in the beginning of the stream, but I should drop link in the chat on YouTube. somewhere in the middle also. But okay, maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. Um, there was no super chats, by the way, on Rumble. I'm checking right now, and there is no super chats there. Let me check also Boosty to make sure that yes, there is no questions on the Boosty also through Boosty. So therefore it is time to end the live stream. Thank you very much for your attention, dear friends. In case you want to support my work, under this video in description box you will find links to my PayPal or Boosty platforms that you can donate through, which also please consider to subscribe to my Patreon. That will be a great supporter also. This is it for now. Have a wonderful day and take care. Bye.